The real truth is that digital transformation is expensive. And if your digital transformation project does not result in your organization becoming better, faster, and cheaper, the real truth is you're simply wasting your organization's money. The one thing you need to understand when you embark on a digital transformation project is that at the end of it, the end result always has to be clear. You've got to be clear about how is this project going to result in us as an organization servicing our customers better. You've got to be very clear about how exactly is it going to optimize or end up in a result where the customer gets service much faster or in a better way. And lastly, you've also got to be very clear about the metric of how does this reduce my cost of service to the customer. Of course, you will not always get this mix right. Sometimes you will go into a project whereby it's all about making it better or a better customer experience for the customer, but it doesn't necessarily make the process much faster or doesn't necessarily make it much cheaper. But at the end of the day, what you want to do is you want to optimize the process for the customer to be able to have a better experience, and spend more with you. You see this a lot with, a lot of these banking apps. Some of the processes, you will find the process will end up being slightly more inconvenient to the customer when you're using the application. However, at the end of the day, the one thing that you will always see is that when you drill down into that, there's some customer value, some intrinsic customer value that you end up having at the end of the day. So it's always very important and noteworthy to then understand, okay, when we go into this project, how do we evaluate it in order for us to give it its required business value or a business case? And when you're building the business case for this, like I said, the three things to always look at is how does this make the process better? So what you can look at in terms of the metrics of how does this make it better, you've got to go as measurable as you can get. So when you look at how do we make it better, you look at things like, does this improve service quality? Does this make service quality for the customer much more seamless? Does this, in fact, ensure that the overall product experience and value to the customer at the end of the day is more than before this particular innovation was introduced? On the other end, you also then look at, does it make the experience much faster? So we can say, and when we look at the case study of the banks, for example, we look at the banks and we say, most of the banks were able to adopt these banking applications, which then ended up getting to a point whereby the customers would be able to do all their transactions, whatever they were, they'd be able to do them much faster than having to actually go to the bank to fill in the deposit forms, etc. And ultimately, the customers would not mind paying an extra fee in order for them to be able to get the service done much faster for them. And so that digital transformation effort, in fact, then was able to pay for itself. You then look at other instances and other cases where you look at how do you make it cheaper. So at the end of the day, when you talk about cheaper, this is in two ways. The first part is, does it make it cheaper in terms of getting the end service to the end customer? This is where you look at, a lot of case studies around how mobile money has been conceived. With mobile money, the cost per transaction essentially is going down dramatically over time, because unlike the olden days where you need to essentially have a network branch all over the place and have so many overheads involved, now mobile money has gotten to a point where there's agents that are all over the place, and those agents now, the cost of transaction with them is much lower than that of actually having overhead of all these different branches, all these different people that you've got to get in order to service customers all over the place. And ultimately, that has now made the service much cheaper to get to the customer. And the second part of that particular part around cheaper is how now can you translate that cheaper service to customer to then now making your product offering more competitive and now ultimately much cheaper to provide to the end customer. And now that's the essence of how you can be able as a business to get to that sweet spot whereby you can be able to provide a service that is much better than your competitors. One that is delivered to the customer much faster than that of your competitors. And lastly, and most importantly, that is cheaper, especially in this inflationary environment that we're currently living in. So it's critical that as you build the business case for these projects, it's very, very clear. How does this improve customer experience? How does this make it better? How does this particular innovation or this project we're about to embark on actually help us to get to a point whereby we provide the service much faster? And lastly, how does this make it much cheaper to provide the service to the customer? And how can this allow us to be able to increase our margins as well as reduce the final cost the customer has to pay? These are some of the considerations that I really hope you take and consider as you go into your next digital transformation project. Thank you, and please join us next time as we have more and more of these discussions around how you can get more value from your digital transformation projects. Thank you.